Muy buenas tardes, mi nombre es Juan Camilo Arias. El día de hoy vamos a proceder con un artículo de la Universidad de Harvard, en el cual vamos a tener una aproximación al tema contractual. A New Approach to Contracts. When Dell originally selected FedEx in 2005 to handle all aspects of its hardware return and repair process, the companies drew up a traditional supplier contract. The 100-page plus document was filled with supplier shell statements that detailed FedEx obligations and outlined dozens of metrics for how Dell would measure success. For nearly a decade, FedEx met all its contractual obligations, but neither party was happy in the relationships. Dell felt that FedEx was not proactive in driving continuous improvement and innovative solutions. FedEx was frustrated by onerous requirements that wasted resources and forced it to operate within a restrictive statement of work. Dell's attempts to lower costs, including buying out the world three times during the eight-year relationship, ate into FedEx profits. At the eight-year, the parties were at the breaking point, each lacked trust and confidence in the other. Yet neither could afford to end relationship. Dell's cost of switching to another company will be high, and FedEx will have trouble replying to renew and provides the contract generated. It was a lose-lose scenario. Unfortunately, this story is not unique. Companies understand that their suppliers are critical partners in lowering costs, increasing quality, and driving innovation. And leaders routinely talk about the need for a strategic relationship with shared goals and risks. When contract negotiations begin, they fall to an adversarial mindset and a transactional contracting approach. They agonize over every conceivable scenario and then try to put everything in black and white. A variety of contractual clauses, such as termination for convenience, which grants one party total freedom to end to the contract after a specific period, are used to try to gain the upper hand. However, these tactics not only confer a false sense of security, because both firms' switching costs are too high to actually invoke the clauses, but also foster negative behaviors that undermine the relationship and the contract itself. We argue that the remedy is to adopt a totally different kind of arrangement, a formal relationship contract that specifies mutual goals and establishes governance structures to keep the parties' expectations and interests aligned over the long term. Designed from the outset to foster trust and collaboration, this legacy enforceable contract is especially useful for highly complex relationships in which it is impossible to predict every what if scenario. This included complicated outsourcing and purchasing arrangements, strategic alliances, joint ventures, franchises, public private partnerships, major construction projects, and collective bargain agreements. A growing number of large organizations, such as the Canadian government, Dell, Intel, AstraZeneca, and the Sweden's telecommunication firm Telia, are successfully using this approach. In this article, we look at the theoretical underpinnings of formal relationship contracts and lay out a five-step methodology for negotiation them. Collapse incomplete contracts and shadings. Companies have traditionally used contracts as protections against the possibility that one party will abuse its power to extract benefits at the expense of the other. For example, by unilaterally rising of lowering prices, changing delivery dates, or requiring more onerous employment terms. Economists call this hollow problem, the fear that one party will be held up by the other. The fact that virtually all contracts contain gaps, omissions, and ambiguities, despite companies' best efforts to anticipate every scenario, only exacerbates hollow behaviors. Leaders employ a range of tactics to try to ensure that they are not taken advantage of by a powerful partner. These include contracting with multiple suppliers, forcing suppliers to lock in prices, using termination for convenience clauses, or obligating suppliers to cover activities that might arise after the initial contracting phase. Some companies go so far as to install a shadow organization to micromanage the supplier. Early research by one of us, Oliver, who won the 2016 Nobel Prize in Economics for his work on contracts, predicted that in response to the combined problems of holdups and incomplete contracts, companies are very likely to make this distorted investment that produce poor outcomes using multiple suppliers instead of only one. For example, increased cost, so thus operating a shadow organization, termination for convenience clauses create perverse incentives for suppliers to now invest in buyer relationship. 60-day termination for convenience translate to a 60-day contract. One CFO at a supplier told us it will be against our fiduciary responsibility to our share shoulder to invest in any program for a client with a 60-day termination clause that require longer than 2 months to generate a return. The implications for innovation are obvious. Buyers are crazy to expect us to invest in innovation if they do the math. In 2008, Oliver, together with economy theorist John Moore, revisited his work on contracts. They realized that an unequally important problem in shading a retaliatory behavior in which one party stopped cooperating, ceases to be proactive, or makes countermoves. Shading happens when a party isn't getting to outcome it expecting from the deal and feels the other party is to blame or has no acted reasonably to mitigate the losses. The aggrieved party often cuts back on performance in subtle ways, sometimes even unconsciously to compensate. Imagine that a supplier of engineering service submits a proposal in a competitive bidding process and wins the contract. If demand is lower during the term of the contract than the buyer stated in the RFP on the scope spanning a unanticipated area, the supplier profit will take a hit. If the buyer refuses to adjust the supplier's fee or the statement of work, the supplier may try to recoup losses by, for example, replacing the expensive theme is currently has on the project, which is less costly C team. In long term, complex deals, shading can be pervasive that the thread for the behavior becomes a death spiral. Oliver and Moore's expanding theories focuses on contracts reference points, a new perspective, emphasis the need for mechanics to continually align expectation or update reference points as anticipated events occur and needs change over time. A new approach. At the same time that Oliver and Moore were looking at the contracting problem from an economic perspective, University of Tennessee research, included two of us, Kate and David, we're working with companies to come out with a new approach that will produce healthier and more sustainable partnerships. Their efforts lead to the best methodology for creating formal relation contracts, a process that establishes was in if for we. Partnership mentally is called vested because the parties have a vested interest in each other's uses, writing contracts that are legally enforceable, which is why we call them formal. They include main components of a traditional contract, but also contain relationship building elements such as a share a vision, guiding principles, and robust governance structures to keep the parties' expectation and interests aligned. Relational contracts that are really rely on parties making choices in their mutual self interest are nothing new. Of course, the benefits of informal handshake deals have been studied and promoted over the decades. Legal scholars Stuart Macaulay and Ian McNeil were early advocates in the 1960s. In the 60s, Japanese headed to an arrangement in which buyers from close association with an often of instakes in suppliers is a type of relation contract. See the new improved Keretu HBR September 2013. Perhaps in surprise and most companies and their legal counsels, in particular, are uncomfortable with informal handshake deals, especially when the shakes are high. In fact, many companies now believe that even the Bowden Kereuzi model, which Toyota and Nissan, among others, use it so successfully, tries up capital and limits the flexibility. The formal relational contract address these deficiencies. Shading happens when one party isn't getting the outcome it expected. When Dell and FedEx reaches their breakpoint, they choose to abandon their existing contracting process and create a formal relational contract that specifies desires, outcomes, and define relationship management. Process at the operational management and executes levels. In the first 2 years, Dell and FedEx were able to reduce cost by 42%, Scribe at 67%, and defective parts per million to record loss levels. Both companies now consider the contracting approach a best practice and have applied in other relationships. Today, 57 companies have employed the vested methodology. David and Kate have consulted of many of these projects, including several mentioned in this article. Results have not been tracked for all of them, but many have told us that they and their partners are happy with the approach and see it benefits, including cost savings, improved profitability, higher levels of service, and a better relationship. Putting into practice. Before jumping into a formal relationship contract process, companies must determine whether is it right for them. Some relationships, such as those involving the purchase of commodity, products and service are truly transactional and only needs traditional contracts, but many organizations require long-term, complex relationships for which the vested methodology is well suited. A case in point is Vancouver Island Health Authority and South Island Hospitalities, a partnership of administrators and doctors who work together to provide impedient care for patients with the most complex medical issues in British Columbia. The entities decided to explore relational contracting in 2016, 2 years after their conventional contract has expired and countless hours of contentious negotiation had failed to replace it. Working with the University of Tennessee, including Kate, they embarked on the five-step process. Step 1, lay to the foundation. The primary goal of step 1 is to establish a partnership mentality. Both parties must make a conscious effort to create an environment of trust. Trust one in which they are transparent about their high-level aspirations, specific goals, and concerns. And if their previous contracting process led to distrust and a vicious cycle of shading, they should reflect on how and why that happened. At Island Hill and South Island, the parties thought out the old contract and chartered a term of 12 administrators and 12 hospitalities to design a formal relation contract. Each individual worked with a counterpart from the other organization to establish connections in key areas. For example, Spencer Cliff, a hospitalist from South Island, and Kim Caron, Island Health's vice president for finance, legal, and risk, lead a small group because on the rethinking the conventional free for billable service or payment structure. We were no longer interested in just developing a contract. Recalled Jean Meskin, a hospitalist at South Island who co-headed the contracting team. But in building excellent relationships at multiple level that will allow all of us to be leaders in Canadian healthcare, whether as administrator or hospitalists. Step 2. Co-create a shared vision and objectives. To keep expectations aligned in a complex and changing environment, both parties, not just the one with greater power, need to explain their vision and goals for the relationship. The Island Hill and Soul Island theme held a 3 day offside to craft their vision. Together, we are a team that celebrates and advances excellence in care for our patients and ourselves through shared responsibility, collaborative innovation, mutual understanding, and the courage to act in a safe and supportive environment. The Führer established a set of four desired outcomes that flow from the shared vision. One, excellence in patient care. Develop a formal and robust quality structure. Second, a sustainable and resilient hospitality service. A strange recruitment, mentorship, and retention process create an efficient and flexible hospitalist scheduling model, clearly define hospitality service and workload, develop stronger interdepartment working relationships, and train develop current and future hospitality leaders. As three, is a strong partnerships continue to build a healthy relationship between Island Health and South Island. Four, a best value hospitalist service. Proactively manage the budget optimize billing, review workload, and increase operational efficiency. In a subsequent workshop, the team delved deeper, crafting for high level desires, outcomes, 7 goals, and 22 tactical and measurable objectives. One objective, for example, called for improving physicians willing to the provision medical service plan for cost recovery for the hospitalist fees. The parties created a joint project collaborative working with billing support and IT technologies to develop an electronic billing program to maximize billing submission, ultimately improving cost recovery from 87% to 100%. Step number three, adopt guiding principles. Value error infraction and shading occurs because one of both parties feel unfairly treated. This risk is highest when there are many unknowns about what will occur after the contract is signed. In step 3, parties coming to six guiding principles that contractually prohibit opportunistic tick, tick for that moves. The six principles reciprocity, autonomy, honesty, loyalty, equality, and integrity form the basis for all contracts using the vested methodology and provide a framework for resolving potential misalignments when unforeseen circumstances occur. Island Hill and South Island formally embed their interpretation of the principles in the preamble of their contract. Each was crafted to establish a new norm for the partnership. Under reciprocity, for example, they highlighted the need to conduct ourselves in the spirit of achieve mutual benefit and understanding. Under equality, they acknowledge the unavoid- unavoidable imbalances that arise in contracts. We are committed to fairness, which does not always mean equality. We will make decisions based on a balanced assessment of needs, risks, and resources. Again, it's important to note that these guiding principles have teeth, although the contractual language may be vague. Courts are obligated to interpret it should there be a dispute. Indeed, indeed, the Canadian Supreme Court recently took up a case in which a franchise line alleged that it was not being treated fairly by the franchise owner, and therein lies the beauty of the formal relational contract. Few companies will want to risk an expensive court case for breaching the guiding principles. Thus, the contract becomes a deterrent against counterproductive behavior. Step 4, align expectations and interests. Having set the foundation for the relationship in the first three steps, party hammer out the terms of the deal. For example, responsibility, pricing, and metrics. Is it crucial that all terms and conditions of the formal relational contract are aligned with the guiding principles? With the right mindset, develop the development of the contract becomes a joint problem solving exercise rather than adversarial contest. Consider how the island health administrators and South Island hospitals tackle pricing, which had always been their strict point. Historically, the two parties had operated under a show of opaque, opaqueness. For example, Island Health never shared the budget with the hospitals, and South Island less than optimal reporting process meet inevitable bickering over billable hours. Tim Cameron of Island Helm described how the Western methodology broke the impasse. We consciously approach the economics of the relationships with full transparency and a problem solving mentality instead of negotiation mentality. She told us, we put everything on the table and we challenged the contracting team to figure out ways to work with the money we got. The parties ultimately came out with an alternative to the standard fee for billable hours method. They designed a hybrid pricing model with a combination of fixed and variable rates coupled with incentives to improve efficiency. The model also gave the hospitals autonomy in scheduling. After all, the team realized who better to optimize the scheduling for superior patient cares than the doctors on the front lines. Under the new pricing model, when the inpatient's population is low, the hospitals can opt to take time off and save island health money. When the population is high, they manage their hours in a way that's within the budget and optimize patients' care. South Island has the opportunity to earn incentives if they improve efficiency and billing, which they can invest in research and quality of care initiatives that they are passionate about. Both parties felt that the new model was a win-win solution that would have been unachievable under previous contract. Step 5. Stay aligned. In this step, contracting parties go beyond crafting the terms of the agreement and establish governance mechanisms that are formally embedded in the contract. Island Health and South Island created for four joint governance terms shared to live into the relational contract. A. The relationship team focuses on monitoring the health of the relationship. B. The excellence teams focuses on quality control, transformational initiatives, continuous improvement, and prioritization and tracking of innovation ideas. C. The sustainability team focuses on our workload, scheduling, recruiting, and retention. D. The best value team focuses on finance, billing, workload, optimization, and operational efficiencies. Each team meets at regular intervals to review progress against their shared vision, goals, outcomes, and measures. The contract also specifies a secure governance mechanism, two in a box communication approach in which an administrator is teamed with a hospitalist for each of the four governance teams. The approach encourages trust and honesty between the two sides. Said Ken Smith, a hospitalist at Soul Island, before we had no one to speak with if concerns arose. Now I have someone I know fairly well at high level in administration. If I need to make an urgent decision or have a difficult issue that can wait for the next formal meeting, I can phone my two in a box partner and ask to meet. Such pairing are also highly encouraged outside the governance teams to strengthen the relationship and build trust between parties at all levels. For example, Kim Caron and Jean Maskey informal partners both say that formal relational contracting was transformational for their respective organizations. Both point to the surveys conducted immediately before the process began and 1 year after the relational contract was in place. The number of people who expressed a positive attitude toward the relationship increased by 84% in just 2 years. Administrators and hospitalists who had called the relationship broken, dysfunctional, and distressful now describe it as a collaborative, trusting, and supportive. Aaron points to financial benefits as well. For the first time, the administration and our doctors are innovating together to drive efficiency and optimize for patients' care with our limited budget. She said, "We not only came in under budget, we also increased or renewed by improving our MSP billing process and in a publicly funded health care environment. That is exactly what we need to be focusing. The governance structure also helped the parties surmount the tricky problem of scope creep. While the contract was being developed in 2016 and 2017. Canada passed a law legalizing medical assistance in dying. At the time, there were too many unknowns about how it will be implemented to address the issue formally. So the sustainability team came out with a pilot project to address how to fairly add the additional scope of work, a new role for healthcare providers to the hospitalities schedule and pricing model. Gone were the battles of not in scope. Instead, there was a spirit of how can we accommodate this new reality given our statement of intent. The future contract competitive advantage. Formal relationship contracts will never completely replace traditional transactional contracts, nor shall they. Nor shall they. But the process we have outlined should be part of the contracted to govern highly complex relationships that demand collaborations and flexibility. Glenn Gallins, the attorney representing South Island Hospitalities and law professor at the University of Victoria, offers the following advice when it comes to embracing formal relational contracts. The focus on negotiation, the foundation of the relationship first is brilliant, but the real power is it threads all the way down to core decisions on how the parties will work. In a business world where strategic long-term relationships are critical to competitive advantage, leaders have no choice but to overturn the status quo. Bueno, esta fue la lectura del día de hoy. En este artículo, pues vamos a explicarlo ya un poquito más detallado en español. Analizamos varios fundamentos teóricos de los contratos y de las relaciones formales que hay en esos contratos y cómo negociarlos. Siempre se debe buscar, digamos, un contrato gana-gana. Lo que veíamos ahí fueron, aparte, pues, digamos, de, de los pasos y los mecanismos para lograr estos contratos, varios ejemplos también, por ejemplo el de Dell y FedEx, en los cuales estos contratos, digamos, no terminaron en buen término. En los contratos, las empresas, digamos, siempre tienen varios proveedores y lo que buscan allí es como obligarlos a fijar precios y otras actividades que pueden surgir después de la contratación inicial. Entonces ahí fueron algunas cosas de las que no le gustó a FedEx por parte de Dell, por lo cual, digamos, ellos bajaron un poco en su operatividad. Hay algo que, digamos, también el artículo lo llamaba y era el sombreado, era que digamos, por ejemplo, hay aumentos de costos y el sombreado en este caso es que una de las partes deja de cooperar y deja de ser proactiva por no haber obtenido el resultado, que fue el que vimos en ese ejemplo de FedEx y Dell. Em, También hablaba acerca de que en los contratos escritos que son exigibles hay elementos también de un contrato tradicional, pero también componentes de visión compartida y estructuras sólidas para mantener alineados los intereses de las partes. Las empresas, había otra parte en la cual hablaba acerca de los contratos que se hacían mano a mano o de apretón de manos y que las empresas ya no se sentían cómodas con estos contratos informales, especialmente es cuando había mucho en juego. Contaban también en la historia o el ejemplo de dos empresas grandes automovilísticas como Toyota y Nissan, que inicialmente sus contratos fueron de esa manera. Habla también acerca de las recomendaciones, de que antes de un proceso contractual las empresas deben determinar si es adecuado para ellas, ¿cierto? Hay que establecer una mentalidad de asociación entre ambas partes, que haya confianza, transparencia, metas y preocupaciones y que si el anterior contrato terminó en un círculo de sombreado, que digamos es como la parte que más se enfrasca allí o que mucho habla el artículo, hay que saber y determinar por qué sucedió ese tema o por qué se terminó, digamos, en un mal aspecto. Mm, Habla también de que no solo la que tiene más poder debe buscar beneficiarse, los objetivos tienen que ser para la relación, es decir, que haya un beneficio gana-gana, que hay unos principios que son innegociables, que son la reciprocidad, la autonomía, la honestidad, la lealtad, la equidad y la integridad, que forman como la base de los contratos para resolver posibles desalineaciones cuando ocurren circunstancias imprevistas. Y el último de los pasos que hablaba era siempre mantenerse alineado. En ese paso, las partes, digamos, van más allá de redactar los términos del acuerdo y establecen mecanismos de gobernanza que están en el contrato. Hablaba, por ejemplo, acerca de cuatro equipos. Estaba el equipo de relaciones que monitoreaba la relación, había otro que era el equipo de excelencia que se centraba en el control de la calidad, el equipo de mejor valor que se centraba en las finanzas, en la facturación, en la eficiencia operativa y que cada equipo se reunía regularmente para revisar el progreso con respecto a la visión, metas y resultados compartidos que se habían instaurado en primera ocasión. Ese fue entonces, digamos, la información que pudimos obtener aquí del artículo de la Universidad de Harvard, específicamente del área de Business Review. Les agradezco mucho por la atención y les deseo una feliz noche.